We're recording now, okay?
All right.
So, welcome everybody that ends up watching this on YouTube. This has been something that I have wanted to do for a really, really long time. I think that as the show goes on, and we're going to become more relaxed and it's kind of become more natural. The theme of the show, and actually the name of the show, is going to be Chasing Passion. And I've divided the show into two parts. The first part is more of technical, it's how to get from point A to point B. And the second part is more psychological, where we talk about like kind of our therapy stuff that you saw from my talk therapy through gaming episodes, if you watch those, where we talk about our feelings and how things came to be, maybe, I don't know, from our subconscious. So I brought my best friend in the whole world for the first episode, and I'm nervous as fuck. Nathaniel Chapman. And there was a lot of reasons why I picked you to do it first. And I think the number one
Because I'm
reason,
emotional.
yeah, because you're emotional and you're going to make for some good content, and I'm extorting you. Um, No, mostly it's because I think I thought about it for a long time, and I would say I trust you. This is something I had been thinking about doing for like years. I was like, oh, I would love to interview my friends. I would love to. I've been really trying to figure myself out lately, and I've been thinking about the skills that I have as a person. And, I would go
hmm
to people, I would go to my friends, and I would say, what am I good at? And like they wouldn't really know what to tell me, which is like super depressing because they're like, I don't know, you're just kind of, I guess you're there. Like you're not the
Gosh.
worst. You're not the worst
Aw.
person to have around. No, the point being, like, it was really abstract and kind of hard to identify what the skills that I brought to the table were. So, because I'm not really super technically sound, I'm not really super creative. I don't have these really clear cut skills. Like, you definitely have a skill as a performer, and that's a huge reason why I'm going to talk to you. Like, whenever I have gone to see you, whether it's music or a play or something that you've done, you get into it, you practice, you work at it, and you produce like really high quality content. And I don't do that as much. But so I had to start thinking about my family, and I thought about my grandfather, and I thought about my dad, and I realized that we had this skill uh, of talking to people one on one. So,
Yeah.
like, where a lot of people that I meet all different kinds of people, and I'm able to make friends and have kind of intimate or closer relationships with a variety of different people. Some like powerful people, dishwashers, different people from different walks of life. I'm able to, in a one on one stance, able to talk to and relate to and have conversation. And I think that honing in on that is going to be really good for me. So that's part of what this show's about. I felt that the last series that I did was more selfish, and I want to provide people with more value. I also know that I struggled with trying to figure things out, like how to get from point A to point B. I'd get really
Mm.
overwhelmed when I saw somebody that was a doctor or a lawyer or was in a different career field. I found myself thinking,
Right.
how do they even get there to that place? And I think
hmm
hopefully that is going to like become more clear as the show goes on. And I also wanted to like expose the world to some of my friends. I wanted
Yeah.
to say, hey, look at all these cool things that normal people are doing. Normal is not a pot shot, but these things that people are doing around us that are cool every single day. You don't have to be The Rock, or you don't have to be, Russell Wilson. You don't have to be this extreme outlier. You could just be a normal person that has like, I'm really good at this thing, and here's how I did it, and here's how I made
Yeah.
something, and it was really cool, and it was well within a normal range to create this. So
Yep.
I don't know how long this is going to last, but we're going to figure it out. I get boring after 15 minutes, so this might be 16 minutes and 15 seconds. So,
It's not going to get boring.
yeah,
We're going to make this.
let's figure it out. So, first, let's talk about you. And I picked you, other than being my best friend, because you have made an album.
Yeah.
Yes, you've produced an entire album. You went through the whole
Yep.
process. You recorded, you wrote the songs, you play a shitload of instruments. You are talented. and you figured it out and you went step by step by step and you made something, which I listened to, and it's great. If anybody has a chance to listen to it, it's an awesome album. You and I have talked about it a lot. It definitely has the feelings of like Mumford and Sons and very folky, and
Hmm.
and the messages are great. So I guess what I would say is, why don't we just start with the technical process? Like the
Okay.
first time that you wrote a song on a scrap piece of paper, all the way up to like the album is finished and you have a CD that you brought to me and said, here it is, here's the finished product.
Yep.
And I'll probably interrupt you and just take over and ask you a shitload of questions, but I think that would be a good place to start.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's funny. So growing up, I always kind of had a knack for writing just some, for the most part as a kid, silly little jingles and stuff. And most of the time it was irritating, annoyed people, and I did it to annoy people on purpose. I also had like a really high squeaky voice as a kid, so it was super obnoxious. And so I just kind of had this like fun little knack and never really thought it was going to go anywhere other than that. But as I got older, my interest in music really started kind of, I don't know, brewing even more as I got older. And by the time I was 13, 14, it was like, yeah, I want to start I want to learn an instrument. And so I took piano lessons and started learning guitar, harmonica, just kind of whatever. If I could pick it up and kind of figure something out,
Yeah,
I wanted to play it.
that's cool.
And that really kind of blossomed the already kind of interest I had in music to add to what I was kind of writing and coming up with myself, and kind of take these silly little jingles and start actually writing legit
Yeah.
music and lyrics and things that actually were meaningful, that weren't annoying people
Yeah.
anymore.
So what was the shift for you to, when did you notice a specific event that happened where you began to actually shift between doing this thing that was kind of like teasing and playing around to actually becoming something serious? Was there like something that triggered that, or did that just like, was it just natural, like as you matured as a person, it just kind of came with it?
Yeah, I think it really had to do with just a maturing,
Yeah.
kind of understanding my own feelings, my own thoughts, and realizing, wow, I can actually put these into words and put music behind them. It just gave it more of a personal touch to it.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's funny because like I've always had a desire to be like a speaker and be a public speaker, a motivational speaker, but I always feel like I trip up on my words once I get up to a mic and start
Yeah.
speaking in front of people. It's like my thoughts are going crazy. But when I can actually put it into lyrics and put music to it, it was like a much easier form for me to express what I was trying to convey to people. And so as I got older and I started writing these songs, it was like it really kind of took on this form of, hey, this is how I can express what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
without feeling like I'm stumbling over my words or I'm going to start rabbit trailing all over the
Yeah.
place.
Get that. So it's almost uh, like a level of control, almost like a controlled chaos for you, where it was like,
Yeah.
like this, there's too many possibilities, and then with music it allowed you to focus that energy in onto something and kind of eliminate all those other possibilities and just focus on this one thing that produced something great.
Yep. In
That's
fact, I actually really like how you describe that, and I might use that from now on when describing my music. Controlled chaos. I like that.
Well, yeah, there's
Because
when I was doing one of the episodes of Talk Therapy Through Gaming, one of them, I was talking about this concept of me being a really structured, organized person. So I
yeah,
really do well with like systems and checklists and having all of these things. And I think that I had a misunderstanding of what creativity was. I used to think that someone that was creative, in relating it to like a kitchen instance, like a chef would be creative because they would just whip something up off the top of their brain. And what I really
yep,
found as I got older was that that's not what it was. What creativity really was having this really kind of intense understanding of a subject and knowing how all of the components work together in unison, and then finding different pairings that worked together that other people hadn't figured out yet in such a
yep,
complex layer. And I had this really like linear, because of the way my brain works, I had this really linear, like, this is what creativity is. And what I realized was that even though I was really structured, I could find a way to be creative through making like this YouTube video. Like I could do what you were doing, which is like taking all the chaos, removing all of the choices that were there except
Mm-hmm.
for one choice, focusing in on it, and then just like improving time over time over
Yep.
time.
Yep.
And then like then you start understanding the mechanics. Because one of the things that I've seen when I've seen you perform at like karaoke or talent shows or whatever, or concerts that you're doing, is that you are really easy to switch between the instruments that you're playing. And I think that like whether you're doing the harmonica or whatever you're doing, you can go back and forth between them. And I think that speaks to that you have a certain level of understanding of how those things work mechanically, and then you fit
Right.
them together with their sound. So
Yep.
I mean, it's really quite awesome. So you started kind of writing songs, and then what was the first real song that you wrote that you were like, wow, this is something good? Because as
Yeah.
somebody that consumes music, like, you start to develop your own tastes, and then
Mm-hmm.
you create something yourself, and you measure it, and you say, oh, this is good. Like, then when you do something
Right.
that's like at a certain skill level, you're like, yeah, this is good. This is what I need to be doing. What was the first one
Yeah.
like that for you?
I would probably say my earliest recollection would probably be one that I wrote on the piano years ago, and this was at the time I was writing like it felt like I was writing a song every day almost. I mean, it was just like songs were just coming, but at the same time, I really felt like, gosh, they all kind of sound the same. It seemed like it was kind of the same words, just written different, and I was
Yeah.
like, all right, well, these aren't really sticking. And it would be like a month later, I'd kind of forget, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that song. So they weren't really didn't have a hold with me.
Yeah.
And then when I sat down this one time and I started writing this song on the piano, and it was just like, hey, this is a legit song. Like, this sounds really good. This is unique. This is different. The flow of the song, how it's being sung, the dynamics of it were different. It just really stood out. And I think the other part was when I was first writing songs, I was so focused on the lyrics because I love lyrics. If I can't hear the lyrics in a song, a lot of times I'm like, it's a cool
Yeah.
song, but I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was just all about the lyrics, and I didn't put any focus really on the music. So that's why a lot of the songs sounded the same.
Yeah.
And as I kind of matured in my musical growth, it was a realization of how much, how important the actual music is to the lyrics, because the music actually helps amplify what you're saying and conveys it better than just throwing some random tune behind it that just doesn't really actually pick the words up. And so that, I think when I wrote that song on the piano, it was like one of the first ones where I just felt like, hey, the music is actually lifting the words up,
Yeah.
and it was giving it a different feel than anything I'd written before. And that kind of helped ignite this like desire to write songs that weren't just, here's another song, but no. I'm putting time into the words, and then I'm also putting time into the melody behind the words to help convey it better.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what's the name of your album again? I forget it off the top of my head.
Yeah. The album is From Higher Ground to the Other Side.
Yeah.
So a really long title.
I really liked it. So you had this natural maturity that was intertwined with music. And it's weird because I talk about symbolism a lot, and I talk about things representing things, and it's clear that if you looked at yourself from the perspective of only a musician, you could
Hmm.
see almost like a parallel person next to you that was maturing as you matured. So like as you
Right.
matured just with the mechanical tasks in life, like your music matured, and then you could hear
Yep.
you in the music. So like, wow, this guy has
Exactly.
grown up. I mean, this is like when you hear artists all the time that reinvent themselves, and it's like that's
Hmm.
where they are right now. But this is the idea of like your music was just a manifestation of where you were at that time. So
For sure.
when did you decide in your mind that you wanted to actually write an album, like make a full album?
So I had actually been writing songs for, a number of years by the time the production of the album started. But prior to that, it was more or less just I was just writing songs. Didn't really think too much. I kind of had a dream and a desire to make an album, but didn't really know where to start. It is kind of a difficult journey in the sense of getting an album made because sometimes it's finding the right people. Sometimes it's just, do I have the finances to make it?
Yeah.
Um, I kind of lucked out in my situation. I had a friend who knew a guy who had a studio, and the guy heard my music and said, "I don't care. We'll figure out the financial part. Let's get you in here, and we can talk that afterward. But we need to get you recording." And so that was a real kind of encouragement and boost to me to just at least get my foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then we were able to discuss the financial side and make things work and get an album going. But it was really just, in all honesty, a lot of times it's just kicking yourself and making sure you take the opportunity when it comes to you, because I know that there was other opportunities prior that had kind of come to my door, but it was always this, I don't know if that's going to work. And this was one moment where it's like, I better jump at this opportunity or it's going to pass me by.
Yeah, I mean, my next question, I think that I was thinking in my head as you were saying that, it's like, so you essentially found your connection to the recording studio, and then the guy who from there mastered the album for you through networking. Essentially, like, I had a
Mm-hmm.
friend of a friend, and then I got my demo tape in front of him, and then he heard it, and the rest was history. I mean, I guess my thought process was, what would you have done if you didn't have that? Like, if that hadn't fallen in your lap, I mean, it's hard to speculate what you would have done
Mm-hmm.
because it's already happened, but like,
Right.
would you have felt as compelled to write an album? Or would you have just gone Google searched like a studio paid per session
Right.
and done it that way? Like, what are your
I
thoughts?
pro I my the direction I was heading was eventually I probably would have just started looking and researching different studios, just because I was getting so much encouragement of, hey, you need to make an album, you need to get this stuff recorded, hey, I want to be able to listen to it when I'm in my car or when I'm at work, and you gotta put it on an album. And so the pressure and the encouragement, the good pressure and the encouragement,
Yeah.
was really kind of starting to build up. That I think that really kind of helped me jump on that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, with today's ability to be able to hop on, online and start looking for studios and researching and all that, there is great opportunity out there. The other aspect I had even considered at that time was possibly even buying my own equipment and doing my own recordings. That's becoming really popular now for people.
Yeah.
It's just kind of setting up your own little home
Yeah.
recording studio and just producing it yourself. At the time, I just didn't feel like I had the understanding of that side of the music
Yeah.
world, that I was like, no, I don't even want to venture into that or try that. I'd kind of done a little bit here and there with some friends who were trying to do it themselves, and they were a little hokey pokey, but
Yeah.
it was a fun opportunity to kind of get an idea of what this could be like if I
Yeah.
made it into a real studio.
Well, it gave you some perspective. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
because I mean, this is the idea, right? It's like you have taste because you've been consuming content
Hmm.
for your whole life, and so you have your own idea of like what is good and what's not good, and like so then you hear somebody that's like, oh, this isn't good, or like
Yeah.
you guys are dicking around or whatever you're doing,
Yep.
and like it
Yep.
not getting done, but the idea is there, right? Like the
Exactly.
right. So it's
And,
like
and, and
it's not all a loss.
no, in fact, it's funny because I had some recordings from those kind of goof off kind of fun opportunities with friends that I actually brought to the studio when I started recording my album and said, hey, here's some ideas that I've kind of messed around with in the past, some sounds and some different, little things we threw into these recordings that maybe it's something we could carry on. And some of it really did actually kind of translate into the actual album that we made in different sounds and ideas that we put to the songs that we did. So that was kind of cool that
Yeah.
there was some earlier kind of, I don't know, ideas
Well, you were
that were
able
already.
you were able to integrate some of your more
Yeah.
playful personality
Yep.
as opposed to like pushing a certain message, right? Like you
Right.
wanted it to seem like you. And like there's
Yep.
all different kinds of parts of you at any given time. And so it's nice that you were able to kind of bring those to somebody and be like, can we incorporate this? What are you
Hmm.
thinking about this? And bouncing it off somebody that was giving you like a ton of positive feedback, I think.
Well, and that's definitely something too that, I mean, anybody who listens to this, that I would encourage is, if you are at a place where you're starting to look around for a recording studio for somebody to record with, really make sure that you have a voice in the project and in what you're doing. Because I was really blessed to have an opportunity where, as much as the guy recording my album, who ended up producing it and signed me to his record label, he really allowed me to have a lot of choice and voice in the making of it and the sound of it. Even though he was also really behind a lot of the getting it produced and made, he really allowed me to be able to make some decisions too, as well as I allowed him to help make decisions and add stuff that I,
Yeah.
you know, wow, I didn't see that, I didn't hear that in there, but that's cool. Let's put that in there.
Yeah.
But making sure that you find somebody that you can work well with and actually have a voice in your own project, because it is your music that you're producing.
So I guess before I dive into the kind of other stuff that I particularly enjoy, which is like your earliest memories, I would say looking to the future. And this is a question that I always have about somebody that has something that they're really into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you're really into this, and when I watch you perform, I can say that you really enjoy what you're doing. But on some level, you've chosen to like have it as a hobby and not as a career for a certain
Mm-hmm.
sense. My first question would be, and I always bother you about this, another album, yes or no, long term.
We're actually in the process of making a second album, but it has been a very long process. It's something I'm hoping will finish up this year, um, and get done. It's one I've actually been really excited about making and finishing up, just because I think the songs, as much as I love the songs in the first album, the songs in this album I feel are stronger and really express even more so, things that have been on my mind, on my heart, and things that I wanted to share. So,
Yeah. So then my
yeah.
next question is, and this is really like in a kind of an important question,
Mm-hmm.
what are your feelings about it? Like what are your feelings about having a hobby that you're super into that isn't your career? Because there's a lot of discussion nowadays of like why do you not go all in on music?
Right.
Because I mean you have a job and it's great and you work
Mm-hmm.
hard, and I have a job and it's great and I work hard, and we're always looking for ways to reinvent ourselves. what
Right.
what are your feelings about it?
Yeah. Gosh, I would love to go full time with it. Some of it is really just taking that jump, I guess,
Yeah.
maybe. That's
Yeah.
something I haven't done yet, but that's just, it's tough. I mean, you got bills that you need to pay, you got goals
Yeah.
that you want to accomplish, and sometimes it's that, well, is this going to accomplish that?
Yeah.
Is this going to bring in what I need to be able to accomplish that? And I hope at some point that's the case. I definitely get encouraged to push
I
more
mean,
and
yeah, I
to
mean, I would
invest more in that.
yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that, encourage you to do that. But like you are right. There is a certain, because a lot of times people will say, "Oh, just go in," but you really do have to consider where that where music is in your hierarchy of values in a certain sense, because are you willing to live a certain
Right.
shitty life, like are like live in someone's basement and like
Mm-hmm.
only eat top ramen for 5 years, like really though, like are you actually willing to that? And like most of us are like, no, like
Be on
honestly,
the road like
like
all
I
the
would
time.
rather just have my hobby and like make
Yeah.
something for myself, and that's a really
Right.
complicated thing, and I think people are talking a lot about that nowadays, and there's a lot of pressure to figure that out. So it's nice to hear somebody that feels like me, that's more neutral of like, I'm not
Hmm.
sure. I'm not sure because I know that you've
You know,
done shows before. You've done lots of shows.
hmm yeah, and the tough part too, I think for me, I'll just speak for myself anyway, is that a lot of my music is music that I hope encourages people. And so sometimes my mindset isn't necessarily on like, oh, how can I make a bunch of money off of this?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be sweet to make a bunch of money off of it, but that's not necessarily my goal when I'm going around sharing it. It's because I more or less desire just to encourage and lift people up if I can. And so that's sometimes where there's also the hard,
Yeah.
kind of balance of I can still encourage people and still try to make a living off of it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I talk about this a lot, I think, because we talk about everything a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But um, but when you create a lot of something, just by its very nature, it like loses its value, and so there is a certain desire to like only really put out like the best content,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like because it's limited, and I talk
Yep.
about this with you, and I said like if people like when something ends, right? Like we really mostly what we enjoy in life is when something is a complete project. That's why when I did talk therapy through gaming, I made 10 episodes and I stopped, was because like
Hmm.
it's a complete project. Like if you watch a football game, like we enjoy the football game, but what we really actually enjoy is like when it's over. And then
Right.
we talk about it and we analyze it and we work through it. And it's when you're creating something that you think is, especially if it's like intimate, there
Hmm.
was this documentary about, I forgot what it was called. I think it was called Indie Game. And it was about these small groups of guys that made like a bunch of games like Super Meat Boy, and
Okay.
I think it was called Indie Game. And one of the guys in there had said uh, he was happy that it had made a shit ton of money, but at the same time he felt a level of disconnection because people weren't understanding this thing that was really personal to him, and all the
Hmm.
characters that he had made that were from his childhood in his mind. They were just like, oh, you can't jump over this. Oh,
Yeah.
you can't get to this. You can't get past this cliff. And he was like, and on one hand, he was like, I don't I understand that they're not supposed to understand it, but like that's kind of what I'm searching for. Like when I
Right.
put my art out there, so I do kind of understand the idea of like keeping something small and like
Yeah.
putting a ton of thought into it. Like all the greatest games, because you and I game all the time. It takes them
Hmm.
10 years, like
Yeah.
like to make something really good. Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out. The new Call of Duty that's coming out. It's going to be fantastic. But like when they you pump out a Madden game every year, it's like
It's the same thing.
mm,
Yeah. It's just not. Yeah.
I mean
What do you
that's
do?
mostly the point. It's like it's just you're
Yeah.
regurgitating it. So for now it's a hobby for you.
For the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the most part, it's something that I do when the opportunity arises for me to do it.
Yeah.
Like for instance, this weekend I'm going down to uh, southern Washington, kind of the Oregon Washington border. I'm going to play at a big festival down there. It's an opportunity that popped
Yeah.
up. I don't know anybody there, but it was an opportunity that popped up. They were allowed me to jump onto the lineup and be one of the performers on the stage, and so that's it's just kind of looking for those opportunities and taking them when they come,
Yeah.
and seeing where it goes and what doors might open from it.
Yeah. So that means you're not hanging out with me this weekend.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
You can have me from, let's see here, Saturday 8 a.m. to about Saturday 1 p.m.
oh, that's God, that's useless. I'm not getting up. Uh, so,
Neither
so
am I.
yeah, my next question is, oh, I totally lost it. Okay, here you go. My next question for you is, without naming any specific details, your your worst gig that you ever performed, and your best gig that you ever performed where you felt like the most welcome. Because I know that one of the things about when you go to a gig, regardless of what it
Hmm.
is, whether it's a talent show or whatever. Like there's so many anomalies when you get
Yep.
there. Like this show that you're going to this weekend, like you genuinely have no idea what you're walking into. Like you're just
Right.
literally going to show up with your instruments and be like, what do you guys got? And then like I
Hmm.
guess we're just gonna make it work, or we're not, or
Yep.
I'm gonna go home, you know? So what do you think? And you can
So
try to
I can
generalize it so that you don't hurt anyone's feelings.
no, I can clearly remember my worst gig, and this wasn't anybody's fault necessarily. It just it all hit the fan. Okay, and I was on my way there, and to begin with, I'm on my way there, and I had a little fender bender, so I was like really kind of pissed off. Like, great, this is what I'm going into this whole show with. I'm already in a bad mood. Awesome, but I'm like kind of pumped because this is early on when people were starting to get to know me. Word was going around like, hey, this kid's cool. And I was like, all right, cool. And so I got invited to this. It was like a recovery type group. And I knew a bunch of people there, and they were doing like a special night for music. And they're going to have me there, and there's going to be other people performing. And I was going to kind of open it up, and I was stoked. Like, cool. These people know me. They're excited for me. I show up, and I'm just like, okay, get this bad mood, this bad vibe off of you. You'll deal with your car when this is done.
Yeah.
Just blow them away. So I get up on the stage and pull my guitar out, and everybody's like cheering and happy and stuff. I get halfway through my song, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm feeling it. String snaps
Hmm.
on my guitar, and I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And so I'm trying to finish it, but I'm like, it's just not. I can't. I got the string in the way, and I'm just like, and so I just kind of finished the song halfway through, and I was like, all right, well, cool. They got a keyboard. I'll play on the keyboard. I'll do some piano music. And I walk over, and I was like, for the next song, I'm going to be playing on the piano. And I sit down at the piano, and it sounds just like this nasty, stupid, like 80s synthesizer. And we could not get it off of that to like a regular piano sound on this keyboard. And so I was like, it's fine. I'll play it with this. And so I'm playing my music, and it just sounds so
This is the
stupid.
best
Sounds
story.
it just sounds so corny, and I was just like, oh, this makes my song sound so stupid right
And
now.
the thing is like as I'm thinking about the story, it's like this isn't like you kicking it with your friends. Like you're not
Right.
like at someone's house like messing around like this is
No.
really dumb. Like you're like
I'm
out
trying to
doing like
I'm
a
trying to
thing and people
perform,
are like
and
watching you for real and you're like if
yeah,
you're like this wow, what I want to get out of here.
I'm sweating. I'm just like angry. I'm frustrated. I'm beginning to hate music at this moment. And so I finished my song, and everybody's like, oh, you were so good. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. Thanks for being nice. And so I left, and that was probably, yes, one of my worst moments performing anywhere. Uh, on the flip side, probably one of the greatest moments. I'm trying to think here because there's been some good ones. I think probably one of the cooler ones was my album release concert that I did, which was a really cool event. You know, I even had some speakers that I had set up, and it was just like an hour and a half, 2 hour show, something like that. And so it's just a real like one of my first times kind of putting on my own show instead of just being kind of like another performer
Yeah.
for the night. Um, but there was another one that was really awesome that I enjoyed, and that was in Snohomish. There's a place called Tim Noah's Thumbnail Theater, and I had an opportunity to put on my own show there, and it's just this cool. It's
That was
very
the one
intimate,
that
very
that was
kind
the
of
one that I
small.
went to.
Yeah, and your dad was there, and
Yeah.
yep,
That was a really cool
yeah, and
place.
it was just a real cool, low light, kind of intimate little theater to be able to perform at, and it felt really nice because for me, um, with the style, I mean, you know my music and the style that I do, it's not necessarily something that I'd probably take to like some big old, arena because it's just not that kind of music. It's more personal, intimate, and close up. And having a venue where it gives you that feeling of just being close, almost like you're in my living room and I'm sharing some music with you. It was just such a cool feeling. It was how I hoped most of my
Yeah.
performances from then on out would be like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's cool. I mean, well, I love what you do. And I actually think we're just going to dive into the last part of it.
Okay.
and because we've already actually been going for 45 minutes, so
Wow.
we are doing really well. And I'm
Well,
very, yeah, I'm trying to make
it
it as authentic as possible. And I'm really glad that I picked you for the first one because you and I just have such good, like,
feels like it's only been 15 minutes.
right. We have a certain way of dialogue, which, I have said this like 10 times already, but you and I talk about this all the time of the ability to have long-term dialogue and talk for a while and like how that plays out. And that sometimes you're fleshing out these really personal ideas and
Yep.
you can't just do it in a 5-minute clip. Like it has to be done slowly and over time. That's so great. I love it. And I'm totally keeping it. There's nothing that's more fitting.
Oh my gosh, I'm sweating from my eyelids.
There's nothing that's more fitting to embody you than that. Oh, that is so good. I'm crying. I needed a good laugh. I'm also really tired. Uh, wow. Jesus.
You're saying.
Pepsi is done for you. So it's the second half of this, and this is the part that I actually think interests me the most, and this is more selfish than anything else,
Yeah.
is like trying to understand how someone starts to enjoy something, really enjoy something. Because I think a lot of people that I've met and myself oftentimes find they try a lot of different things in life. They try different activities. They go different places. They go on
Yeah.
vacation. They go do things. And there's a certain level of there's a certain level of like I don't melancholy, is that the right word, or like
Hmm.
neutral, just like not I'm not that into it. And so my question would be, what are your earliest memories of music? And how did those evolve into when you were a teenager prior to the jingles? Like, what are, when you think in your mind, like the very first memory of having joy of listening to music, what was it?
Gosh, earliest memory. I don't know. I think just music as a kid growing up, it just amazed me that you could make these kinds of sounds and that you could put so many different sounds together, unique sounds, and it all actually sounds good.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess to make my question even more specific, I would say,
yeah.
what was it specifically about music? Because when you're a kid, you're exposed to lots of different things, music and
Okay,
sports
got it. Yep.
and what, as like a pre-10-year-old kid, that drew you to music more than other things.
Um, well, part of it was, I mean, I'm kind of a small guy, so I never really got into sports.
Yeah,
Would have loved to,
yeah,
but I just never did. You also know my backstory, which is for another
yeah,
another night.
yeah,
But I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to get into sports and to other things too that I did have an interest in. But when it came kind of time for me to have that opportunity to kind of, hey, what would you like to get into? Music was one thing that I loved, and so for me it was kind of taking something that I had an interest in that I knew I could get into. Didn't matter whether I was tall or short
yeah,
or small or whatever. It's anybody can get into it. And so for me, that's kind of where the desire was. Once I realized I had a natural, you know, kind of gift in it, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
It took off. It was like, okay,
yeah.
nope, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Do you
This is
think
my thing.
do you think that you went into music because you were like it was readily available or it was acceptable at that time for you? Or do you think that, like, do you think that if you were given, and that once again, I'm asking you to look
Yeah.
back and just
Yeah.
kind of observe yourself, do you think that if you had been presented a plethora of activities that you would have chosen something different? Or do you, because there's some people that when they're born, they're like, man, I'm going to
Right.
make music. But that's not most of us. Most of us are like, I have no idea who I am and like, what are my choices?
Right. I think by the time it was presented of, hey, what is, because I was about 13, 14 when I started getting really into music. That's when I started learning different instruments, piano and guitar and all that. It had been kind of presented like, hey, what do you want to start getting into? Do you want to get into certain things? And like basically my parents were like, what hobby do you want to start, do you want us to pay for, type of thing. And
Yeah,
I just had a natural desire of like, I want to play music, so start paying for piano lessons.
yeah,
Like that's what I want to learn, how to play piano. And I had different people that I looked up to, musicians, singers,
yeah,
that I was like, I want to be like that guy. They were my Russell Wilson for kids
yeah,
who love
yeah,
football. And so that's kind of where the drive came of, yeah, I want to get into music. And the interesting part though is that as you go though, you start learning that even within the thing that you like, you have to find how you like it and how you can actually enjoy it and do it. Because I love music, I love playing music, I love writing music. There are times I will watch somebody play the guitar and I'm thinking, well, I'm done. I'm going to go put my guitar away and never touch that
yeah,
thing again because I can't do that.
yeah,
But you have to get to a point of going, no, 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 what can I do with it that I enjoy and that I'm good at and
yeah,
that I can run with? Each person has their own skill, their own gift, and some people it's music, some people it's not music. But even for the people who it is music, even within that, it's different for each one. So,
yeah. I think that that was something super insightful that you just said, which is like something I echo a lot, which is that it's you versus you.
hmm,
And it's like you can't compare yourself to someone else and their race
yeah,
that they're running. Another part of the reason when I thought that I was going to do this show was I looked at someone like The Rock, or I looked at someone like Russell Wilson, or somebody that's at the extreme end of the most hyper productive. And when
yep,
you're like trying to get your life together, like nothing can be more depressing than that, because I mean, you're just never gonna get there. Like
yeah,
even if it's just like your genetics, you're not ever gonna get up at 5 a.m. and run 27 miles and then eat 14 protein shakes and then like make a movie and then blog and then like it's just, I mean, I know
yeah.
that you don't swear as much as I do, but it's just never gonna fucking happen. Like it's just like
No,
I like junk
no,
food, and so like it's really easy when you're trying to get your life together
yeah,
to like get really depressed, especially
yep,
if you don't know what you want to do. And so I think that I'm being genuine when I say I think that that's a super important point, which is that
right,
you have to find your own niche within what you're doing. If you like it, then just find your way through that,
yep,
and don't
yep,
worry about what anybody else is doing. And if it only ends up being a hobby and you enjoy it, then that's what it ends up being. And if it becomes something more, then that's great.
exactly,
So
for
then
sure.
I would say let's finish this with something motivational. So I would say to you, if you sat down with somebody that was 13, 14, 15, or 16
Whoa,
that liked music
okay,
and didn't know anything about writing songs, didn't know didn't know anything about networking, was probably moderately insecure about what they were doing, what feedback would you give them to do what they wanted to do?
figure it out yourself. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean,
No,
and that's may not be
no,
wrong,
no,
actually.
no.
Figure it out
I would,
yourself. Yeah, great. We're
because
never
I
inviting
had
you to
to.
the middle school. The worst motivational speaker ever. Give me,
Short and sweet.
give me my 10 grand.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That's
Half
so
of you
funny.
kids aren't going to be able to write one song, so just give it up. No. Honestly, the biggest encouragement I would give would be to be patient. Music is something that does take patience. It can be very frustrating at times. When I took piano lessons, I'll be honest with you, as much as I love music, I hated taking piano lessons. I just wanted to learn it and then get out of my way and let me do what I want to do. And so I took about 3 years of piano lessons, and then I told my parents, like, I don't need it. I'm done. It frustrates me more than anything.
Yeah.
With that said, there's things I wish I would have stuck with, because there are definitely things to learn in those lessons that I just, but it is what it is. But I would encourage those kids to be patient, can just continue to go after it as hard as you can.
Yeah.
But incorporate the things that you love about it. Why is it that you had a desire to get into music? Is there somebody whose sound you want to try to be able to play? Then go for that. Don't just run into music thinking I want to play music, and then you're listening to everything and thinking I can't do that. No, listen to one person that you like and kind of go for that, and that will start opening up the door. Because I had musicians that I liked, that I wanted to be able to play like. I wouldn't be able to say I play exactly like them, but I feel like I got myself close enough that I felt happy with that, and that allowed me to then branch out to kind of come up with my own style, my own songs, my own style, way of sharing it, and then just learn how to express yourself in it.
Yeah, that's great.
So
So that's two more questions for you, and then we're done.
cool.
First one is easy. Your favorite instrument or most enjoyable instrument to play that you like to casually play?
Ooh, my favorite to play would be the piano.
Cool.
The unfortunate part is I don't have a piano, so whenever I'm in a room with a piano, you're probably going to lose me to it, because I'm going to be sitting at that
Does
piano
it have
playing
to
it.
be a real piano, or can it be a keyboard? Are you a
I'll
snob? Are you
play.
a snob? Oh, here it is.
I'll play. I'll play a keyboard if it's the only thing that's in the room, but a real piano is
Man,
different.
that was a solid 5 out of 10. Not caring. And the last question for you is, I think about this a lot too. When you were raised, if you had to think about this philosophy, were you raised to be process driven, or were you raised to be um, results driven? So let me give you an
Ooh,
example.
okay.
I was raised to be results driven, and I
Okay.
think that for the last 15 years has been a tax on me, because I have just gone for the money. I've just gone, and I'm doing great. Like, I have no
Yep.
complaints. I have a house, I'm married, I have a kid, and my bills are paid. I don't have any complaints. But I was always looking for the quick solution. And an
Yep.
example of something of being results driven was like your parents would say to you, if you get A's and B's in school, we'll give you a reward.
Mm-hmm.
Or were you taught the alternative, which is that you should enjoy the process more than what the end result is? Like, you should enjoy playing soccer hard and knowing that you played hard, not that you won 3-2.
Yeah.
What would you think that was for you?
You saved the deepest question for last. Okay. So I would say process driven was probably, if I were to choose one, it's probably process driven. I, growing up in my family, I worked with my dad in construction, pretty young age, basically child labor. But anyway, um, but in construction. And the one thing with my dad that he would always tell his customers was he wasn't necessarily going to get the job done the fastest. It was going to be a process. But in the end, they would love the result, and he was always the best deal around town when it came to getting a job done. And so for me growing up, it was always realizing like, hey, there's a process, there's some patience.
Yeah.
You don't just rush in and just get it done and then done, get your check and you leave. It's no, you make sure that you take the steps to get to the end correctly.
Yeah.
And that way, when you're done, you feel satisfied with the end result, but it's the process that you focus on as you go. The thing with that I will say is I think there's a benefit to both, and there's also a curse to both.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, and this really actually does reflect, I would say, on probably my music career, hobby, path that I've been walking is I've been so focused on the process that I think that's what took so long for me to actually finally get into the door and start recording and eventually end up recording my CD, was because I was more focused on the process and like, oh yeah, the end result will come at some point. Yeah. And it was like, well, no, like you're dragging this process out now. This is you're abusing the process drive. And so there is a benefit to it, but you also have to be careful with that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the smartest things that you've said in the evening is
Probably one
exactly
of the smartest things I've ever said.
is that it's you're actually 100% right, which is that it is a balance of both, because you have somebody like me who is very system oriented and is results driven and is like, if this isn't making money, I don't care. Like but there's kind of no soul to that. There's no like joy in that. And then you who's like, I want it to be perfect, and then that's why you don't put it out. And one thing that I think about, and I think we'll end it with this, is when my son was born, I had to really figure out, and I through classes and reading and talking, I had to figure out why is it even important if my son is creative at all? Like why does that matter? And I think that the answer is something like, do you want them to solve some of the problems of the world or bring joy to the world or reduce the amount of suffering for people in the world? And that's why it's important for your son to be creative, because creative people can find solutions to problems, but you want them to be balanced. So is there a place where people can go if some random person on YouTube sees this, that they can buy your album?
Yeah, so you can actually buy my album on iTunes. You can also buy it off of boatrockerrecords.com.
Cool.
You'll find a page with the info about me. You'll also be able to contact me through that. You can also find my music page on Facebook. I've got Nathaniel J. Chapman Music on Facebook. You can find me there. And then you can also find my album on Spotify. It's also on YouTube as well. So
that's great. So I'm going to end it with that. Stay on the line after I'm done recording, and then we'll chat. And thank you, everyone. I hope that a bunch of people see this and this guy goes on fire, because he deserves it. He's been a great friend, and I hope you check his music out. This was the most perfect first episode that I could have asked for. So thank you very much.